Are you struggling with the return of serve? Or maybe you want to make it a real weapon? Well, if you want to rip the return with power and control, then it's crucial to have the fundamentals to a great serve return. This is Jeremy with Fundamental Tennis. In this video, you will learn the return of serve fundamentals that every pro tennis player uses. You will see slow motion footage of me demonstrating the one- and two-handed backhand return and the forehand return. If you stay until the end of the video, I will show you a couple simple drills to help you practice each fundamental. But before we get started, if you like simple yet in-depth explanations of the fundamental techniques and tactics that will help you win more matches, then feel free to click the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you don't miss out on the next video. Studies show that the return of serve is the most commonly missed shot in tennis. About 30 to 35% of rallies end in a missed return. That means that 30 to 35% of the time, the rally is one shot total, meaning the serve goes into the box and the return is missed. The return of serve is the least practiced shot of all the primary shots in tennis. However, the return of serve is the most important shot in tennis when returning serve. So it's quite simple. Hit a solid return and you will win most of those points. Hit a poor return and you will lose the point more often than not. The return is not like a ground stroke. As you'll see, it's different in many ways. The split step is one of the most important factors to having a great return of serve. While I have just done a detailed video explaining the split step, what it is, how to do it, and the timing of the split step, in which you should see this video, you can click it at the end of the video that you're watching right now if you want to see a more detailed explanation of the split step. But right now, quickly going to go over what a split step is, how to do it, and then the timing of the split step is also crucial. So a split step is when you push off the ground with both feet and then you land on the balls of your feet. And the moment you land, you're immediately pushing off the ground in the direction of that serve. So the split step is going to allow you to have your fastest possible first step towards the ball, which is super important because you generally don't take more than one step when returning a fast serve. This video is mainly about returning a fast serve. I'd like to do a different video in the future about returning slower serves like a second serve. Now, a quick how-to on the split step. You want to make sure that you're landing in an athletic position. Okay, you don't land with your feet together. You want your feet approximately a shoulder and a half width apart. And again, you're going to land on the balls of your feet. You don't want to land on your heels. Now, the timing of the split step is crucial. It's widely believed that you should land on the ground from your split the moment that the ball is on the strings of the opponent's racket. But now that is incorrect, because if that is so, then you will not have the information of where the ball is going to go, since the ball is still on the opponent's strings. Therefore, when you land on the split step, you're going to be waiting. And when you do the split step correctly, I call it a touch and go. So notice my feet, as soon as I land, I'm already pushing off in the direction of the serve. So the timing of the split step, believe it or not, is you want to be at the top of your jump the moment the ball is on the server's racket, so that as you're coming down from the split, the ball has just came off the opponent's racket and you will have picked up the direction of the ball, so that when you land that split step, you're immediately pushing off the ground as opposed to landing the split and waiting. So once again, we want that athletic position. Push off both feet. You're approximately going to be off the ground about 3 to 6 inches for a typical fast return of serve. And then you're going to push off the ground the moment your feet land on the ground. Now, if you've ever had a lesson on the return of serve, I'm sure you heard to keep it simple, or don't take a backswing, or shorten the backswing. All these things are totally correct in comparison to a ground stroke. Now, this is because when receiving a serve, you're often receiving a very fast ball, so there's a lot of energy on that ball. If you do a lot with your body, like a big backswing, a big turn, a big coil, a big load, then you're creating a lot of energy on your own body, and you already have energy on the ball. So it's often very hard to control the ball that has energy by putting too much energy on your body, i.e. having a large backswing. Now I'm going to demonstrate first the forehand return and what I'm talking about. I want to talk about in detail about keeping the swing compact, doing less with the racket, less with the upper body. As you'll see, a lot of people will talk about keeping it simple, but I'm going to really go into detail about what that means. I'm going to show you what the pros do on the return of serve right now, and we're going to compare it a little bit to the ground stroke and how they're different. Now, when receiving a forehand return of serve, you're going to see that the non-hitting arm is not going to be as straight. There's going to be a lot more bend. It's also not going to be parallel to the net as it should be for a typical ground stroke. It's going to be pointing a little bit towards the right net post as a righty. So the left arm has less coil. It's not as straight. Now if we talk about the racket arm on a forehand, the hitting hand is typically not going to be as high because you don't have time to make a large loop. So the hand is going to be definitely lower than chest height, assuming it's a fast flat serve or a fast slice serve. So the hand is lower on the return of serve compared to a ground stroke. Also the hand, if I'm going to hit the ball this way, it doesn't go back as much because you don't have time to take it back. One more thing about the hand, if I'm returning towards the camera, the hand is going to go more to the outside or away from the body. Okay, so we're keeping it short with the height, the outside backswing, and also how far back the hitting hand goes. Now, if we look at the forehand again, one more thing I want to mention. This is probably the most important thing to consider when we talk about having a compact backswing on the return of serve, and that is the hips are going to face the opponent much more so be closer to perpendicular to the net when returning serve, and the shoulders are going to give you that turn or that coil. Now, I want you to think about a ground stroke. When you hit a ground stroke, you're going to turn, and then you're also going to have some individual movement of the racket arm. However, on a return of serve, again, we're not going to move the hips. We're not going to turn the hips much. It's mainly a shoulder turn, and the shoulder turn is the backswing. So notice how I'm not moving my arm independent of my body. If you watch here, here's a ground stroke. You see how I move my arm independent of my body. A return of serve, the shoulder turn is the backswing. So that hitting arm on a forehand should not move at all when you receive a fast serve. Again, the shoulder turn is the backswing, so there's less shoulder turn, definitely a lot less hip turn. We already talked about the hand. It's going to be lower, it's going to be more to the outside, and it's not going to be back to the back curtain as much. So everything is simpler. Once again, the non-hitting arm is not stretched as much, and it's also pointing a bit more towards the opponent. Now, if we look at the two-handed backhand and the one-handed back, we're going to go over these quickly because it's very similar to the forehand. The hands are not going to go back as much, so on a typical ground stroke, my hands will be here. On a return of serve, my hands are going to be about in line with my back hip if it's a very fast serve. Also, my hands are going to be lower. You don't have time to make a big bubble loop, so it's going to be quite simple, okay? Now, also, I will say that if the serve is very, very fast, sometimes it's best to not follow through all the way, especially if you're having trouble timing the return. You'll often see players finish like this. Federer comes to mind on the one-handed backhand. He finishes with the strings to the target a bit, which we're going to talk about very soon. So one-handed backhand, shoulder turn is the backswing. In other words, the arms do not move independently of the body. So less take back with the arms. The shoulder turn is the backswing. I can't say that enough. If you focus on not moving your arms, whether it's a one-handed backhand or a two-handed backhand, just focus on turning those shoulders, keeping the hips forward, okay? You could pretend like there's a wall behind your back and you can't touch the wall with your racket. I like to use that visual, and that's another thing you're going to see very soon. We're going to have a drill about something like that to help you keep the backswing compact. So you're going to turn less. Again, there's no individual movement of the racket arm or the arms for a two-hander. Keep it simple and maybe shorten the follow through if you're receiving a very fast ball. So now you know exactly what it means to keep the backswing compact, to not use too much racket. In other words, keeping the backswing compact, because the most common issue I see, maybe by far in the return of serve, is players use too much upper body and not enough lower body. We're going to talk about the lower body loading right now. Before we get to my next tip, I want to compare the ground stroke here to the return of serve. Notice how there's a lot of shoulder rotation, about 180-degree shoulder rotation, and my shoulders turn even past perpendicular to the net when preparing. My hitting hand is higher and further towards the back curtain, and my left arm has a much bigger stretch parallel to the baseline. Here, you're going to see that I have a lot less shoulder rotation. You can see my chest when I'm done with my preparation. My hitting hand is lower, it's more to the outside of my body, and it doesn't go to the back curtain near as much. Also, my left arm has a lot less stretch, and it's pointing a bit more towards the opponent. Also want you to take a look at how my follow-through is shortened because I'm receiving a very fast ball here from the server, so my strings are finishing towards the target a bit. So you might be thinking, if I can't swing, if I shouldn't use much upper body and loading and coiling, then where do I get the power from? Well, number one is you're going to get a lot of pace from the serve. So the serve has a lot of energy, so just almost blocking the ball back, you're going to create quite a bit of power by doing that. Now, the other way to create power, which you'll see every tennis pro in the world do, is they load their outside leg. So they dig their weight, most of their weight into their right leg. As a righty hitting a forehand, they dig their weight into their right foot. See how most of my weight is there? You can tell because the heel of my left foot is off the ground. And then from here, they're going to push off this right leg. If it's a right-hander using a forehand, they're going to push off and then go forward at a diagonal in a V shape. So forehand, you're going to go this way, and then backhand as a righty, you're going to go that way. So let me demonstrate two-handed backhand here. If I do my split, I load the leg, you see this, and then I push off that leg, and I go diagonally forward towards the net. One-handed backhand, same idea as a righty. I'm loading on my left leg, so I do my split, load the leg. You see my weight is over my left leg, very little weight on the right leg, and then I'm going to go forward at a diagonal. So loading the outside leg will create a lot of balance, stability, a sense of control for your body and the ball, and of course it's going to give you quite a bit more power without having to do a large swing with the arm, because when you use the arm to swing, much like a volley, you're going to lose control. However, if we can get power from the lower body, you're not going to feel like you need to do these massive swings on the return, because that lower body is what creates controlled power. I've already briefly mentioned the importance of moving forward in a V shape. So you're going to either V left with your movement, or you're going to V right with your movement. Now, moving forward is really important because that's another way to create power without having to do a lot of swing with your stroke. We've already talked about the bigger the swing is, the more difficult it is to control and keep it in the court. So being able to get power from your load, as we've just talked about, and then moving forward. Okay? Moving forward is going to allow you to have a more proactive movement. So it's going to help you to get the ball in a perfect contact point as opposed to standing and waiting for the ball. A ground stroke, you wait for the ball and you often set your feet. However, on a return of serve, you do not wait for the ball. So it's going to look something like this. I like to do a step forward before I split. That's really just style. You'll see a lot of pros on TV do that and some of them don't. So watch this. I'm going to do a step, split, and then I move forward at a diagonal. Okay? I'm going to split step in the green so you can really see how forward I'm moving. Andy Murray's a great example of moving forward, especially prior to a split step. So you want to get that forward momentum. So I split on the baseline, load, and then you see I'm about 2.5 to 3 steps inside the baseline when I hit. Obviously, this is an example. If you're playing John Isner, you might be at that back curtain there. But even when the ball comes very fast, you've got to get some kind of movement going forward so that you have your legs and footwork proactive to get that ball into your strike zone. It's much better than being reactive and waiting for the ball. Once again, a ground stroke, you wait for the ball and you might set your feet. However, on a fast ball return of serve, you still need to be going forward, at least slightly forward, especially if they're burning you on that wide serve. Going forward is going to cut off that angle. This last serve return tip is a big one, and I don't hear it enough. This is really important, and it seems to not be well known. This is a return of serve secret, if you will. So what it is let's compare the return of serve to a ground stroke once again. On a return of serve, because you're receiving a very fast ball, you're going to see that the strings will not point to the ground like this, or even to the back curtain like Djokovic. For one, because you're receiving a fast ball, so we're trying to limit all the moving parts as much as possible. So we're going to have the strings pointing a bit towards the side curtain for most grips. And then when you swing forward, the hand and the racket is going to go along the target line as if you're hitting through 3 tennis balls. That's like a 100-year-old tennis tip, but I think it really applies to the return of serve. Same thing on the backhand return. Instead of going across the body with a little windshield wiper or one-handed backhand, a little windshield wiper, you're not trying to create a lot of topspin on a return of serve, because that's going to make the timing of the return quite a bit more difficult. So, recap. There's not much windshield wiper. So when the racket does this stuff, there's not much windshield wiper on the forehand or the one-handed backhand. You'll see the two-hander, just like the forehand and one-handed backhand, the strings need to stay to the target longer, and you need to extend your arms out to the target longer on a return in comparison to a ground stroke. This is going to help you with control, and hitting it flatter, believe it or not, will help you with control, because once again, trying to create a lot of windshield wiper, rotating the arm and doing all this topspin stuff is going to make it more difficult to time that fast serve that you're receiving. So there's another thing about the ground stroke and return of serve that are different. Once again, hopefully you've noticed that watching this video, the return of serve and ground stroke are quite different in many ways, so you need to practice the return separate of a ground stroke. And that doesn't just mean that you practice returns in a match. You need to practice return after return after return, so you're isolating just the return as opposed to playing out the point. So here's a very simple drill to work on the string staying to the target, not creating all that topspin windshield wiper stuff, and extending the hand out towards the target on a straight line longer in comparison to a ground stroke. So it's very simple. You're going to finish the stroke of your return with the strings somewhat towards the target. So you're going to cut the follow through short so that you can feel the string staying to the target and you can feel that extension out towards the target. So a good visual also is after contact to keep the racket head level with the handle longer. Okay, so let me show you a demo of, you want to receive some serves from your partner or your opponent. They hit you a bunch of serves, isolate just the return of serve, and then finish with the strings to the target, whether it's a one-hander, two-hander, or forehand. Finish with the strings to the target and hold that finish to check it. Again, racket head level with the hand on the finish for the one-hander, two-hander, and the forehand to work on getting that extension and hitting the ball quite flat if you are receiving that fast serve. Here's a very simple drill to work on moving forward instead of waiting for the ball after you do your split step. Getting that forward weight transfer, that forward momentum, so you get that extra easy controlled pop on the ball. So I've put a marker here, a cone. You can use whatever you want. I'm going to split step next to this cone, and then at the end of my return stroke, I'm going to look to see where I am in comparison to the cone to see if I did in fact move forward. So here we go. I split step at the cone, I load forward, and I look back. I'm about 5 feet in front of this cone here, so I know that I've went forward. If I do this and I end up in the same place, then I didn't really go forward. So make sure that you check back at where your marker is, compare it to where you ended up at the end of your return stroke, and see if you did in fact move forward. You could of course also use the baseline, can be a simple marker to see if you've gone forward or not after that split step. So you can do that in practice swings without a ball as I did there, or you could also do it when you have somebody actually serving to you. Here's a simple drill in which I'm working on loading my outside leg. Here I'm demonstrating a forehand return. Notice how my weight is mainly on my right leg. I'm already prepared with the racket back and turned before the ball even comes to me. Here's a slow motion one. Notice how my weight is on my right leg. I load, unload, and I finish the swing with balance. Now, if we look at the backhand here, same idea. Now I'm loaded on my left leg prior to the ball even coming to me. I've already prepared before the ball comes as well. And I have my partner, whom is at the service line on my own side of the net, but away from me to ensure that I can't hit the ball at them. I'm going to receive the ball, in which they toss down from their hand, and then I unload and I hit the ball. So again, I'm already loaded, already prepared, and then my partner tosses down a ball from their hand. Notice how my left leg here goes back and up to ensure balance and alignment. I'd like you to click on the split step pop-up that will come on your screen in this video. This split step video is going to show you a couple drills to help you with your split step, and especially the timing of the split step. Now, when it comes to working on preparing with a much more compact, more simple backswing and preparation for your returner serve, I'd like you to just put a barrier right behind your initial return position. So you could put a bench there or anything at all, really, so that if you take too big of a backswing, your racket will hit that barrier. You could also stand starting at the back curtain or the back wall. So of course you don't want to think about and focus on the handful of tips I gave you regarding the return of serve all at the same time. You want to pick one at a time and work on that for a bit. So you should be crushing those returner serves, breaking serve more often, hitting winners on the return, and really robbing the server of time and space. So once again, this is Jeremy with Fundamental Tennis. Don't forget to subscribe, click the notification bell, and I will see you in next week's video.